Hello, everyone. You're listening to Overtime Radio on CHSR-979 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. There is no last minute of play in the third period today because we have a special guest with us who we've had on before and made me and Johnny look profoundly amateur. Introduce yourself, sir.
This is Eric Drummie. I'm the manager and owner of VRedsHockey.com, a history alumni site for UNB Varsity Reds Hockey.
And thanks for coming back, Eric. It was awesome having you on at the beginning of the year. That's one of our most listened to shows, actually.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I like that show. We got to talk about a lot of good stuff. Stats. I'm a stats guy, so talking about math and stats is lots of fun, and trends and success. And, of course, you know, when you talk about success, UNB hockey team, that's the best, one of the best you could follow. I mean, unless you want to move all the way to Alberta, which right now I don't want to.
It's actually kind of a good occasion this time because we had to leave Sean out of the booth last time, so we were doing all of our recording in Studio B. And we had Shannon Cornelius come on to do the St. Thomas women's hockey preview that we had Sean in for. But we decided to move to the large band recording studio so we can have the four of us on at the same time. So our advanced stats guy gets to meet the advanced stats guy.
Hey, I'm all for it.
I get to get crunched.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Do you have the spreadsheet, Sean?
No, I don't.
Where'd you put it? Where'd you put it?
Eric's one's from previously.
Yeah,
It's
still in there?
Did we leave it in B?
Did you leave it in B? Okay, you guys keep going. I can go.
Yeah, well, you go get that. It'll be fun.
Anyway, Johnny's going to go collect the paperwork from the other studio. We were actually recording an interview earlier today that's going to air next Friday with Cameron McMaster, who's a silver medal gymnast from the Canada Games.
Right. Oh, great.
So we have a lot of stuff that's going on. We're trying to pack a lot of stuff in. For people who are wondering, we're recording this on Thursday, February 28th, so we don't know who UNB is going to play in the AUS Championship yet, but as of the time of the airing of this episode, that game will be tonight at 7 o'clock.
All right. And we do know, for us as our fan base, we know one thing. We're going.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so so now the interesting discussions at this point of the year is how hard do you want to play in an AUS title? I mean, I'm sure Gardiner and most coaches will tell you they want a title. It's a banner. You can put it up on the ceiling. People can see it. But you also have to measure injuries, health. You know, is it really a motivator to get that when you know you're going? And UNB is one of the few teams that's shown that the number 5 seed, you can have success there. They've done it 3 times.
Yeah, and does the banner really matter for UNB at this point in time?
Well, they've got a lot of, when you've got 7 national titles, an extra AUS banner is nice. When you got 16 of them, another one would be nice. But I mean, that whole program plays for something else, which is a big ring and a national title.
Are we talking about whether UNB cares about winning?
Yeah, we literally said
you leave the room and you know exactly what we're talking about, which is what's the motivator for an AUS title when you know you're going.
That's the equivalent to a lower tiered team winning a playoff series.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Almost.
I mean, we sometimes see the starry-eyed team that shows up from somewhere, maybe Ontario or the West, and no, not the West actually. Who have won an OUA title or won an OUA East or West title, and they're all, feeling pretty proud about themselves.
Brock last year.
Brock maybe, and and Brock even back in 2007, their first appearance. It's a whole new learning experience for them, and they kind of, aren't as successful as they hope to be when they come because it's a totally different event that you can't practice for this event. You got to go to it a few times to get used to it.
That's the funny thing that people are saying about St. Thomas's women's team this year is, they would like an AUS banner because they've got 2 men's banners from 61 and 01 that are pretty lonely at Grant Harvey, but that team this year is not playing for an AUS championship. If they win one, it's nice, but they started the season unranked. They quickly jumped up into the top 4. They've sat there for the entire season. They're not playing for an AUS banner. They're playing for a national championship right now.
I remember a story. My friend Dave Kilfoyle, who works CHSR voice for the men's radio, he said he was on, I can't remember the venue, but UNB had won an AUS title. It was like their 4th or 5th under Gardiner, and they did the picture, but he said the seniors on the team were like, okay, guys, let's get together, have the picture, but, it doesn't stop here. Like, they were very low-key. The seniors are very low-key about it. They were kind of doing it for the rookies. They've never, won something. Okay, we'll do the picture, but, just shake it off. This is not the end of our journey. This is simply just one step on a longer journey. There's more to come, so, pace yourself. Let's keep going. It's nice to have, but we're not going to stop here.
Yeah, you were anecdotally really great when we were out in the lobby prepping for the show. So I think I'm going to ask the same question that I asked you there, and then this time everyone will kind of be in the conversation, because I thought that you brought up a really good point, and I'd like to start that conversation. Compared to last year, this team's been statistically very impressive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have the stats here. I mean, they have 22 more goals. They gave up 9 less goals. They have an extra win. 53 points over 52 points. Where does a team that had 52 go when they got to 53? I mean, that's great with 4 rookies that 4 main rookies that really contributed.
And then the question was, is this the best UNB team that we've had?
I can't say yes. I think they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, a team that scores 150 goals in the AUS is a good team. 53 points, never done it before. But I think I don't think this league is as strong as it's been in the past. And I think the 2017 team is the best team I think we've ever had. I mean, 5 players from that team immediately went to the to the AHL, and 2 of them are still there. And one's making his inroads in there, and so the 2 that are still there is Philip Maillet for the Los Angeles Kings. He's playing for Ontario. We have Jordan Murray playing defense for Ottawa's farm team, and you have Etienne Marcoux, who's doing really great for the Montreal AHL team, and he's been back and forth. Petgrave went right into the AHL after that season, and Beauvillier went into the AHL after that season, and Cam Brays went to the Norfolk Admirals AHL for a few games as well. So I mean, we had like 6 guys went into the AHL, like right out of that team. That's just crazy.
And think about Willick, who was 4th year at that time, is now on. Is he still on Bridgeport?
Yeah.
So he was on that team.
He was on that team. Yeah. So, but I just don't see 5 guys on this team doing that. Right, and I'm not saying any of these guys aren't great. I mean, I certainly would see Mark Simpson. I could see Rassel in a few years when he's finished his UNB collegiate career, potentially going to the AHL. He's a big, strong guy. Dov McPhails, if the concussion protocols don't interfere with his progress. But I don't see 5 or 6 guys that could just step into that right away.
Yeah, like it would take a bit of development time.
Yeah,
for them
they'll
to
need
get
their time at UNB to develop and to go to some pro camps like Mark's been to 3 or 4 now and learn what you need to do for that next step. So as a good team, absolutely. But I think overall, I mean, with Acadia coming down to the rest of the pack, I think that's my biggest surprise this year. I did a poll on my Twitter feed. What was the biggest surprise? Was it Moncton winning, or was it Acadia losing, or was it UNB, staying where they are? And not a lot of people chose the UNB staying where they are. It's kind of like, well, we kind of expected it. They didn't lose too much. They gained a lot. Moncton growth was good to see. Moncton's always one of those perennial teams that you hope always does well. But the Acadia dropping to where they were in the rankings, I mean, they gave up. They reduced their offense by 40 goals. I mean, that's more than 1 goal a game they gave up. I mean, you're not going to win a lot of games that way.
So you did, when you came in last time, you brought in a big spreadsheet that Johnny still has. Johnny kept it from the beginning of the year.
Kept it in really good condition as well.
I'm really surprised, man. You kept this in a vault.
Yeah,
because we wanted to have you back when we got to the end of the season, because we want to talk about. So you projected a whole bunch of stuff, looked at a bunch of players, where they came from, gave us a whole bunch of great information. We have your projected AUS standings scribbled there on the bottom. Which
yes, I recognize my handwriting, my scribbles. Yes.
Yeah.
For UNB, who do you think was the biggest surprise coming in, and who do you think was sort of the biggest disappointment? And maybe disappointment's the wrong word for a team that just put up 53 points.
Well, one, I was pleasantly surprised by all the rookies. I mean, there isn't a rookie in this crop that you'd say is a bust. I mean, Boucher, great. Rassel, great. Doug McPhails, despite the injury, great. Probably would have been on the rookie team had he not been out for a number of games. I just think they're all playing great. So I think, someone was a little critical this week on the blogs of Cam Brace. His offense in the playoffs has been weak, wondering why he would be playing with Clapperton, and maybe Anderson should be back on that line. I know Coach has been playing with his chemistry, but if you look at his offense for the season, it's one of his best seasons he's ever had. So you take Clapperton, you take Brace with no points, you take Clapperton and Anderson with 1 assist each in the playoffs, and they still beat PEI in 3 straight.
Yeah,
those guys had 14 points last year in the playoffs. Right now they have a combination of combined 2.
Yeah.
And they still beat PEI in straight games, and there's no reason to believe they won't win the AUS title.
Yeah, that's just a testament to the ridiculously high standards that we set for this team. It really distorts how you look at any other team.
Right,
as well.
But then you have with Chris Bennett not playing with Clapperton in this last half of the season in the playoffs. He's now not getting the aggressive forechecking and checking on the second line. So the second line's really picked, and the third line's really picked it up. So as someone would say, you can't check all the lines, right? They're just, their depth is just too crazy.
So let's do a deep dive here, because when we have you on, when you came on last time, you sort of came in and said this is what I wanted to talk about first. So we sort of asked our first couple questions. What was the thing that you thought was most interesting about this season?
Well, for me, the most interesting part is you never know, and we saw an example of it in the season, whether rookies will pan out. I mean, we hear a lot in August and September about how this guy's a great stud and he's going to really develop, and he did 40 goals here, he did 30 goals there, and he's big and strong and he's really fast. But those are all great platitudes to make the fans feel good about what you're doing as a recruiter and a coach. But, you know, the payouts on the ice. And I think we saw that the recruiting was great. I mean, we weren't sure how strong and how good Rassel was. Incredible, 100%, A+ on that one. Boucher, I think initially when I saw him in Moncton on the road, he's adapted his game. He was trying to play low and fast and trying to beat people, but the defense in this league are way too big. And so he really simplified his game and became a passer and, you know, used his speed to get to open spots. And that's really done really well. I think the defense might have been my biggest worry. Even though they're very mature, it's how are they going to work? Because anytime you take defensive pieces out, you're not quite sure how they're going to work. I think they worked really well. And I guess
they allowed, what was it, 6 less goals?
6 less goals. 9 less goals.
9 less goals.
They gave up only 59 goals. I mean, they're giving up less than 2 a game over the whole season. I mean, at home, I think their average is 1.5 at home, and they're averaging 5 goals 4. So.
And AUS is actually a pretty high-scoring league generally.
Generally, yeah, but not 150 goals worth. So I think my overall surprise is just the chemistry. Every year AUS teams have to find an identity and a chemistry because you're losing 4 or 5 guys and you're getting 4 or 5 new guys. And you don't know if they're going to fit in really well. We saw in Acadia, he had 8 or 7 new guys, and it didn't really work out very well. They're still learning about who they are. And then they lost in the playoffs to X. And they still couldn't get that thing turned, that program to kind of gel. So now it's start all over again and figure out what pieces weren't working and hopefully it works. I mean, they gave up 40, they've scored 40 less goals. So obviously something wasn't working.
But do you think that's a testament to chemistry rather than the players panning out? Because in a lot of sports, like baseball especially, it's like the turnout rate isn't very good for prospects.
Right. Chemistry is one part, right? You have to be able to play with guys and you have to have a program that encourages it and drive. I think it's just the whole package of really good leadership, really good coaching, really good program, really good support. But if you bring in a bust, it's not, if you bring in a guy who doesn't back check, you can sit him, but you only get 22 roster spots. We saw how that hurt Acadia and X as a result of that fight. You can't bring in extra guys just for the fun of it. Yeah. So you got to make sure they work. Because you just can't go find more.
Yeah, it's sort of been brought up in passing twice, and I realize this isn't exactly the wheelhouse that we brought you in for, but what were your feelings about the Acadia NX incident?
Well, I don't really understand. Well, I never learned, nor do I really want to learn about what the underlying circumstances were. Both programs have identified there were underlying circumstances. I think they dealt with it the best. The league dealt with it the best they could. Issued the suspensions that they should, that were hockey suspensions. I think they could have handled it a lot more. Being a level 3 ref myself, I saw a lot more of infractions that were let go, and they just focused on the main instigators. There could have been a lot more suspensions.
Yeah.
Even just onesie twosies here and there, just to kind of set the board straight. But it's over now. Everyone's learned. Hopefully they'll learn more. And I'm glad to see some of the Acadia guys are taking the opportunity to go to the World University Games, which I think is great for them. Helps that program maybe advance and create some leadership. We'll see how it goes.
And you were saying when we were out in the lobby before we started here that not that you're wishing ill on the program, but you sort of hope that X gets knocked out just so the story kind of dies.
Well, I mean, as an UMB fan, I don't like X. So if X loses,
sure.
X loses, I'm happy, even if it's St. Mary's and Trevor Steinberg, who I appreciate as a good coach, but they're the second team I don't like. So it's the lesser of two evils. My friend's enemy is my friend. But I think if they don't go to if they win this series on tonight and then they go to nationals, then there's going to be press from 7 other locations in the country, all asking the same questions that he's answered already, and it just keeps the story going. And I think everyone would their programs and the AUS as a whole would appreciate if this could just for lack of a better description, that could just die and go away.
Yeah. The league didn't the league will never admit this or say this in front of a hot mic or anything like that. But you got to think like the amount of suspensions and just the way they threw the book at both teams is like, okay, you want to do stuff like this is going to cost you your season. And it already cost Acadia their season.
Well, it cost Acadia their season, but if you only want to talk throwing books, I mean, the Hockey Canada rule book allows us to suspend a player for 1 year for a match.
Yeah.
And I didn't see a lot of that out there.
Yeah,
I didn't see any matches, and I didn't see they were throwing books, but they weren't big, heavy books.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right. If you really want a suspension, it's through the playoffs and into next year.
Yeah.
You know, ask Cam Critchlow what throwing the book is like. He hit St. Mary's high, and they threw 4 games on him, and he missed all of the University Cup as a result of it. That's a pretty big suspension.
I'm pretty sure Critchlow was pretty vocal after all the suspensions came
Well, that's why I
down.
brought it up, because he tweeted that as like, well, that's nothing. You know, you suspend a player, you know, with more playoff time, and I got 4 games in the last game of the AUS playoffs, and I missed all of nationals.
Yeah.
So is there any realistic chance that St. Mary's or St. FX win this championship series? Assuming Gardiner sends the roster out to win.
Well, I mean, if the roster goes out to win, no, I don't think. I think UNB's proven. I mean, certainly they had some road failure against X after Christmas, but they dominated at home. I would see them dominating in Game 1. I think St. Mary's is a much fuller, more active end-to-end team that's more like UNB. I think for the fans, a St. Mary's series would be more interesting to watch and more entertaining.
They played them really well this year.
They played them well, and St. Mary's had a little rocky section in the second half. They seemed to lose like 3 games for some reason. They even lost to Dow, which was very uncharacteristic, and they seemed to kind of bring it back. And then they kind of seem to be in the middle of an identity crisis where they're not quite scoring the offense they would like to. But I think it's. If UNB doesn't win, it's because they just didn't execute, and they're just kind of padding their time until they travel to Lethbridge.
Yeah, that was definitely one thing I noticed, like in the games that they played against St. Mary's, which were both St. Mary's took like 2 overtime wins, I think, out of
in the first half they won in overtimes. Yeah,
it was just them clogging up really defensively and everything until like eventually like suppressing UNB basically as much as they can, which I guess is the only kind of game plan to like keep the score down as low as possible.
Yeah,
so
I don't think anyone wants to run and gun as their philosophy against UNB.
Yeah,
I mean, with the Boucher, Clapperton, Bennett, Simpson. We can go through a whole roster, and all the D are active on UNB. There isn't like a pair that says, I'm going to stay at home. I mean, with Colin Solentrop out and then the others in, I mean, it's just more guys. You know, Gattenby's like, I'll rush, right? Carroll says, I'll rush. So now you got 7 guys who will rush. It used to be like, oh, Colin's on the ice, okay, and McIver's on the ice, okay, they're going to be shut down. They're not going to be active. Well, and even though McIver's coming in and activated. So, yeah, I don't think run and gun's going to work for anyone. You have to clog it up, and then you have to counterattack. X's philosophy has been pound it off the boards hard and send a winger. And that's that. If you watched any of their tape last year and most of their tape this year, when the winger sees the defenseman get the puck, he puts his hand down and goes, because he knows that through practice he's been trained off the glass high, landed on the other blue line. They practice that. They know exactly how hard that shot needs to be to put the puck on the blue line. So it's not going to be iced, and it's not going to show up on their blue line. It'll be the far blue line. So the winger just goes as fast as he can. That forces the defenseman to come back out, and they've got some release. And if it turns into a weird bounce one-on-one, you get a shot, maybe a goal. I mean, that's kind of their whole. They're not going to score off the rush.
So it's kind of like a trick play that they like to use, and it kind of exploits team's defense.
They've turned it from a trick play into their modus operandi. That's what they do. I mean, that's their philosophy. Get the puck along, force the defense back. Even if the defenseman blows the shot off the glass, the winger's been going, so the defenseman has to release off the blue line. So even if the puck gets deflected or whatever, it's now out and the pressure's off. So it's not a traditional hockey rush. Like, it's not a UNB start behind the net, pass to a winger, go east-west to the opposite winger, and do all of that kind of stuff. No, they're more like get it out, get a turnover, hit UNB on the way back, get a poke check, and then go and counterattack.
it's like basically like training to catch them off guard all
the time. All the time. Yeah, trying to tease that UNB defenseman to pinch, or play aggressive on the blue line and then shoot the puck over his head and Hail Mary it all the time.
Well, and it seems to me that that's the kind of play that you're almost expecting, and when it happens, you're like, I wasn't ready for it.
And you can see UNB tape. You can see some defensemen go, oh, crap, there it is again. And their head's down, and they're just bombing it to catch that winger just so they can get shoulder to shoulder. And then you're stuck in a position now where you have to just turn around and whip the puck out. And now if there's an X player there, they get that turnover, the guy touches up, and now they're getting their attack. But in 2011 when UNB won nationals and they played Western in the semis, they played the last of the pool games, which is effectively a semi, and then they played McGill. In both those games, their forecheck was so long and so relentless that by the time the other team got the puck and made it out of their zone, they had no energy left. They'd already done their 35 seconds. Yeah. And all they were left with, it's a red line, I got to shoot it in. And then UNB would come down and just do it again for another shift. And there's 4 or 5 shifts in the national title game where McGill they had no gas left. It was like, I've just been killing this forecheck now for 35, 40 seconds. I have to dump the puck. And UNB's like, thank you for the possession, and we will come right back at you again.
Yep.
Right, because one of the things that I always highlight on the broadcast whenever Kaylee and I are doing it is that you have to have the puck to score goals. And if you're constantly turning it over, then that's not going to bode well.
Well, and if you start with the puck,
coffee PEI.
Right? How do you start the puck with a team that's got a 66% face-off success rate, right? So now, 2/3 of the time, you're not even having the puck to start.
UNB women's team this year used that to dominate possession a lot.
Actually. Right. And if you start with the puck, you have more control over what's going to happen with it. And that's why UNB, it's why Mark and Dove, that's why you see so many people quote those stats now in the blog reports and the news, because you're now, a puck possession team is starting right away with the puck. Yeah. And now you can start doing set plays and stuff because you have more chances to try a set play. UNB's favorite set play is when the defenseman goes down low and the winger goes off the boards into the high slot and he's all by himself. And they turn it into a goal once or twice. It's enough. It's a good opportunity, and then rebound later.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you don't win the draw.
Were you at all surprised at the UPEI semifinal?
I was surprised. No, I wasn't surprised. But we'd seen them play that way all year. We knew that they had good goalies, and that just reaffirmed that Messina is a top-line goalie. Mm-hmm. They just need to have better defense. I mean, there were times where they were running around. They just need a little bit more experience. But I was actually surprised at Game 3 that it turned into the 6 or 7-0 or 5-0 game that it was. But I mean, it wasn't that for very long. I mean, it was tight until they blew it open in the second period.
Well, that's just that's textbook for them, because even in games where you think maybe you'll get to see the rare loss that UNB takes. It could be 1-1 or 2-1. I think the last game, it was the game where Dove McFalls actually went out with the concussion and everything, took that big hit. I think it was 2-1 St. Mary's through half of the game, and then one quick goal, bang again, and then the floodgates open. That's been this team's MO for
it's their MO, and if you can lead, you can control. So an X of St. Mary's or a PEI or a Moncton, if they're not leading in the third period, they're in a tough spot because they have to open it up. Mm-hmm. And now you're opening it up against a team that's going to burn you.
Yeah. Right.
So if you have that one goal lead, the hardest part is for UNB the other way around. If they don't have, you're going to see one of those box scores where it's 27 shots in the third period, but they couldn't get a goal because the goalie finally stole one.
Yeah.
Right. But it wasn't because of anything other than the goalie stole one. It's just that it looks like Mancini was hurt in that Game 3. But no, I mean, I think the best part of what I saw, which has not been a characteristic of UNB hockey for the last few years, is scoring blue paint goals. Mm-hmm. People have been overly critical that they're a pretty team, that they look for pretty goals. They pass it too many times. It's you had a shot. Take the damn shot. Why are you passing it to this guy to pass it over there? They've always been the pretty team, and they like that. And I understand that. I'm a hockey player too, and you want to make the good pass of the good shot and the good goal. But when a game's tight, you got to take whatever garbage can, stupid bounce goal.
You have to get in and get dirty.
You got to get, that's what some people get it dirty, get in tight, just kind of make ass shit happen. Sorry, and so that means getting into the plane. It means taking a few whacks on the back, and that has not been a characteristic of UNB hockey traditionally in the past. But in that series, in that game, the game one, every goal was from the paint. Mm-hmm. In Game 2, all the goals were the paint except for that wrist shot that came from the point. That was the first point shot in 2 periods that made it through the screen. Up until then, it was a stick and a body and a leg. They couldn't get a shot from the point to save their soul. That was the first one that made it through, and even that had to be deflected. So I was really impressed with the fact that they realized it was a tight game, that Purdy wasn't going to work, and getting down low and getting in the paint and scrambling for stuff and looking for rebounds was going to be what it was going to take.
I find that was a common criticism, even though like it didn't really hinder their percentages on this. I'm not sure if the numbers are any better, but their power play seemed a lot more efficient this year than it had been in previous years.
Yeah,
even
by 5 points. Normally, they average around 18-19%. So anything over 20 is great.
Yeah. What do you think the key? I know Gattenby has been a pretty good. He's been quarterbacking it, I'm pretty sure, on the first.
Well, I think
unit.
the key to their success now is by putting a fourth forward on, and they've been able to adapt to that. I think they experimented with it last year. I think this year they fully committed with it. Rob Henniger helped them with that. I think Rob is the one to give credit for that. And now with 4 shooters on the ice, rather than 3 with 2 setup guys, I think that's really translated into their success.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is like the set play you were talking about earlier, but like they've been doing a lot better job of like moving it around the perimeter a little bit quicker, taking a fewer passes in order to get it to the inside.
Yeah, and for me, it's the quicker part. I mean, they were passing as slow as grandmother some years. Like, they'd pass it, and all the forwards would move over, and the lane that was there is gone because the pass was so slow.
And there was still 1 or 2 in the league in power plays. Like, you could think, like, how much better could those power plays have been if they just, like, picked up the passing a little bit?
Right. But for me, I'm not terribly focused on a power play. And the reason I tell you this, I did a personal study a few years ago on the translation of success of a power play into your playoffs. And there is a great case study that I did where York University had, I think it was York, had an extremely successful power play, 35% in the regular season. They went in the playoffs and they lost 2 straight to Toronto. And they were 0 for 9 on the power play. Couldn't convert anything. And the difference was Toronto's penalty kill was in the high 80s. And then come playoff time, you can't rely on your penalty kill, your power play.
Because you don't know how good the penalty kills will be.
Because a penalty kill on the other team can adjust, and if they can wipe out your power play, you're done. And almost half of their offense was their power play, basically. And they relied on the power play so much that they weren't winning 5-on-5. And I mentioned this to Gardiner, and he says, this is why they want to be a puck possession team. He says, I'm going to pay... so I'm going to speak for him, and I'm going to kind of put the stats in there. You take 4 penalties in the game. That's 8 minutes down. You're going to pay 52 minutes 5-on-5. That's where you want to win the game.
Yeah.
You don't want to rely on that 8 minutes because it may not come. The whistles might go away. The referee may not call that penalty. That power play may never happen.
What's great is we're recording this before we record an episode that's going to air like on March 1st, and I'm going to point out that Johnny has been complaining for 2 days now that he thinks Toronto is unfairly not given enough power play. and I think that it's appropriate that you've come in and explained exactly my point.
Yeah, well...
No, I'm not just to finish. I'm not saying not having power, not having a good power play isn't having an excessively good power play is a good thing to have. But if you're relying on it as your key motivator to win, which is what X did last year, what York did in my example, is you're in trouble because when pick any analogy, when we got to play the game, you're going to be playing an opponent that's better than average.
Yeah.
And that power play may not be able to save you. So you need to win the 5-on-5 game. The power play should make the game easier to win, but it shouldn't be what allows you to win. And so for last year, X was winning everything on power play, and this year they're not. I mean, their average last year was like 37% for X.
Well, and coaches will tell you, like, you can't rely on a specific situation to win a hockey game.
Because it may not happen.
Right, exactly.
You may not get it.
All you need is a team to be disciplined, take no penalties.
Or what if you get the power play in the first period of the game and you never get another one? You're not really ready to run the power play team in there at 7 minutes or 5 minutes in the game. Legs aren't even going yet.
Is the last team to really manufacture their own success the Gretzky rule Oilers, where they just go down to 4-on-4 all the time and just to give Gretzky an extra 15 feet to play with?
I would say yes. Yeah. I mean, power plays are great. I would say that any coach would say, my power play, my penalty kill, I want it to be better than 1. So what I give up and what I get, I just want to be a little bit farther ahead at the end of the day. But I'm going to spend at least 50 minutes of the game 5-on-5. That's where we want to win the game. That's where I'm going to run 3 or 4 lines. I need to get production from all of that. These specialty scenarios, obviously you don't want to give up goals, so you want a good, solid penalty kill, anything in the 90% range. If your power play is anything above 15, you're going to be 5 points ahead. Great.
Well, it's the reason why, like, if you're really, like, there are certain players, like, whether it's the NHL or in any league, that are called, even, like, they're specialists on special teams, or they're great 5-on-5, and usually that's, instead of being called great 5-on-5, they're just great players because that's the majority of the situation you're going to find
and
yourself.
that was Babcock's Team Canada strategy: get the best players and then give them the role. I think that's also kind of why you don't see Cam Brace playing on the penalty kill. It's also why he's only on the second team on the power play. It's just he's a 5-on-5 guy, and you put him in these strange scenarios. That's just not his key.
So we have about 25 minutes left. I want to go over some of the predictions you made at the beginning of the year. And I'm going to start with, I think, the area you were most correct, which is that you said that the junior A guys that Dalhousie was bringing in weren't going to lead them to success. That was your first big check mark.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, Dal, I mean, I had Moncton last, Dal second last.
But Moncton had sort of a resurgence, which you mentioned might happen at the beginning of the year. You just weren't sure if it was going to happen yet.
Yeah, you have to see how these guys come in, right? I think Moncton's probably, for me, Moncton and Acadia are the big stories for the year. Acadia, I had Acadia third, and I mean they dropped all the way down to sixth, right? I had Dal at 6. They finished at 7. They weren't too far off. I mean, you give them a few extra little bits, and they probably could have been able to get. I mean, at one point there was still a chance that Acadia could have dropped into the 7th spot.
Yeah, we actually tracked both of Dalhousie's playoff battles down the stretch until they came out, because they were in essentially the same situation in men and women's hockey, where they were like a couple points out on both sides and just desperately trying to get in. Because we've had to cover Fabriana Petrica as the Dalhousie's women's goalie. She faced more shots than any other goalie in U Sports by like 200, 250. So she was essentially dragging Dalhousie, kicking and screaming towards the playoffs until she finally gave out.
What was the comparison we did to Gibson from Anaheim?
Yeah, we were tracking Petrica. We were saying that Gibson faces 34 point something shots a game this year for Anaheim, because God, that team is awful.
Right.
But Petrica was facing nearly 40 shots a game for Dalhousie's women's team.
Yeah, and that's like playing UNB every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it wears on you.
So on the top and the bottom, I had UNB. My philosophy there has always been, like many others, they're first until otherwise they aren't firsts, right? I mean, and I wouldn't
to be
have
the
picked
man, you've got to beat the man.
I wouldn't have picked 53 points though, and 150 goals. I didn't see that. I figured with the rookies they had and losing some of the offense that they had, I didn't see them being able to do
being
that.
better offensively than a year
better,
ago.
Yeah. Where's a team? Like I always say, where's a team go? Like they're at the point now that the only place you can go is down. But they still find a way to go up somehow.
Yeah.
Even by 1 point.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, beginning of the year, you said, where can this team go? They can't possibly go up. And then, you were wrong. They found a way.
They found 1 more point and 22 more goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you surprised at all that Clapperton and Boland are the ones leading the team in goals?
No. I mean, that's their role. I mean, I think what we all hoped for
47 points in 30 games
for Boland was last year was learning the league, right? Mm-hmm. For a high-end sniper, it's learning what time you don't have from junior into AUS, because they're bigger and they're faster. And so you have to adjust your shooting time to deal with the fact that the league's faster. I think he did a really exceptional job of that this year. And fun. And also, there's nothing new now in the whole year. Each of the rinks, you've played them twice, you've been on the road trips, you got the mojo going, you know where the bus parks, you're way more comfortable in the league now that you've played in all these rinks twice over a whole year. That's why the first half is really interesting for the rookies, because they're going to 6 other rinks.
The ice box in Halifax.
Yeah, they're going to 6 other rinks, even though they're going to the ice box in the Halifax Forum twice. And
Alumni, which is a freezing cold arena.
Right.
Worst rink.
But even for the Halifax Forum, they sit on a different bench when they're there, depending on who they play.
Really?
Yeah. So Dal has their side, and St. Mary's has their side. And when you're playing St. Mary's, you sit on the Dal bench. But when you're playing Dal, you sit on the St. Mary's bench.
That's confusing.
So you're in the opposite side of the rink. Also, you also play the game with the long change twice.
Right.
Because of how the benches are offset off center. When you sit in the St. Mary's bench, Dal plays the Dal bench is closer to the middle, and they take the closer end. That means you get a long change in the first and third periods. And when you play St. Mary's, then they flip it around. St. Mary's takes the opposite end, and now you have a long change again for the first and third period.
What about the penalty box?
And the penalty box is on one side, which favors that side. So it's easy when they play St. Mary's. It's on they have to cross over when they play as the Dow player. But they play the AUS they play the Aiken Centers that way, where it's on the opposite side. But like in PEI, it's on the same side of both. Everybody's on one side.
And we've talked laboriously about Moncton. Where the benches are just chaos. You've never been in. I can't remember the name of it.
J. Louis Levesque.
Louis Levesque.
In the Moncton game, I went was the one that Mark Simpson scored with 6 seconds left, and we all ran into the parking lot and drove home quickly before anyone realized we were there. Because when my Dave Kilfoy and I celebrated the goal, we realized nobody was celebrating around us, and we were sitting with a bunch of Moncton fans, and they did not appreciate our joyous celebration.
Me and Sean went for the AUS semifinals. The women's won St. Thomas, and Moncton St. Thomas wins that semifinal. We cheer, and as we're walking out, there's like a dozen Moncton fans waiting by the door, just glaring at us.
You, yes.
But the thing with J. Louis Levesque is it's Moncton's bench, the penalty box, and the visiting bench is on the other side of the arena. So when Moncton takes a penalty, their player comes out, jumps in the bench, and a fresh set of legs comes on. If you're the visiting team, you've got to cross the ice.
It's like the LBR. You have to cross. Also, in the case when UMB is there, UMB's on the penalty box side is the backup goalie sits in the penalty box because the bench is too short. So in this game, Parenteau started that game, that Mark, but he had a tough first period, so they went in with the bow, but the backup goalie sits in the penalty box with the player.
If you get yanked, that's so awful.
Yeah, because then you're yanked, and then you're sitting in the little box all by yourself.
You're just doing fodder for the other team.
and you will feel shame. Yes.
So
I think the other part was I had picked X as second, and I later changed that when I looked at the number of rookies Acadia had and X had, and I think I moved. I think I had Acadia at second originally, and I just didn't like all the rookies Acadia had, and I thought, well, maybe they'll have a chemistry problem, which is why I flipped that. And I thought I had St. Mary's at fourth, and I think they percolated to second because X and Acadia just kind of fell apart, and they kind of were the recipients of some of that. I mean, in the points, St. FX gave up 15 points from last year, and Acadia gave up 15 points, and basically Moncton and PEI are the recipients of all of that, and St. Mary's had the same amount of points as they had last year, almost by one.
Yeah, so that's the thing is we've mentioned that we don't think AUS is good this year. Was the league just kind of profoundly mediocre other than UNB?
Well, mediocre in the sense that AUS mediocre, but I still think the top 5 are better than all of the OUA combined. So I think as a whole,
there's bulletin board material.
Yes, at the AUS level, if you look at the last few years where 1 and 2 were super strong, I think it's 1, 2 is a little lower, and then 3's down in the middle of the pack. And so overall, the competitive nature of the whole year was less. The bottom is great. I'm glad that Moncton has more. We went from 3 wins to this year 14. They had a positive gain of 11. Dow went from 9 to 7, but that's kind of equal for them. So I think the bottom kind of moved up, but that second tier kind of dropped down. And that's why we had, at the end of the season, we could have had a 3-way tie, right? If Moncton had won and X had lost in overtime. There's all sorts of crazy scenarios in which any team could have finished third.
Yeah.
Right? Moncton, PEI, and X, any one of them could have finished third, depending on how that last Saturday went.
Yeah,
it's been rare that that's happened. Normally, it's like with 2 weeks to go, we all know where everyone's gonna end up.
Yeah, like UNB had their first round bye locked up weeks ago, and then had first place in the conference locked up not that long after that.
They had the bye wrapped up the second weekend of January.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think they've never done it. I don't think that I've looked at it. I don't recall. I don't think they've ever done it by December. It's easy. It's possible now because of the super biased nature of the conference, where we're playing 18 before Christmas. If you were to win those 18 games, you'd have 36 points, and St. Mary's X only finished with 33. So you almost can do it by Christmas if the rest of the league's a little on the
If you just
side.
sweep at the start.
Yeah, you can qualify for the playoffs. Like if Dow has a really bad first half, or Moncton has a really bad first half, and you've got 34 or 36 points, they might be too far away. 12 games after Christmas is 24 points. So if you don't have at least 13 and you're at 30, then you're too far away. There's only one team you have to beat to get into the playoffs, right? So getting the playoffs, but then getting your bye, there's generally a big gap in there.
So you could go into like the Christmas break already knowing that you're out of a playoff spot.
Yeah,
in that scenario,
or the bye is out. I can't get a bye, right? Mm-hmm. St. Mary's and UMB are too far ahead. But I don't think they've ever really. I don't think Adal or Moncton are looking at that. They're just trying to make sure they can stay with the pace. Also, with the biased nature of the league that we have now, you can't count on getting yourself back into the game after Christmas. You have to be in the game before you go into the Christmas. Yep. Right? That's the joke in the NHL, right? If you're out by U.S. or Canadian Thanksgiving, if you're more than 5 points out, you won't make it.
U.S. Canadian Thanksgiving is kind of like when you can push the panic button or something.
Right,
like
yeah. At that point, if you're 6 points out, you got to push the panic button. AUS, by Christmas, if you're in tight, 12 games isn't a lot. I mean, at one point, you have 12 games. You can't expect someone like UNB to lose 6 of those, right? They're not going to lose half their games, right?
That's fair.
Right. They might lose 2, which they did this year, but they're not going to lose more. So that means you have to lose. So if you're behind UNB by more than 4 points, you're in tough because you got to win all 12, and you have to hope they lose 2.
Yep.
So let's look forward. National championship.
Oh, yes.
We know who the other big contenders are going to be. We know Saskatchewan's in there. We know Alberta's in there. Is that pretty much it?
Oh, I think that's it. Yeah, I mean, the OUA, the teams I wanted from the OUA kind of unfortunately had bad second rounds. Ryerson and Ottawa, I was looking forward to them. I thought they had great offense. They had great run and gun. Young UNB-style teams trying to get to that. But with both of them out, I think the OUA contenders won't be very strong. I think this all will boil down to really how the Lethbridge tournament will fall out for the 1-5, 2-6 positions. If Alberta's 1 and Saskatchewan's 5, that means they potentially meet in the semifinal like they did last year, and we have a Canada West semi and we have an AUS semi, which is unfortunate for the fans.
It's kind of boring.
We've already seen it. We want to see cross. But hey, who knows? We'll see what happens with, it could be if both of the finals end up being St. Mary's and Saskatchewan win and we have a completely topsy-turvy style thing, we could get mixed.
Yeah. Do you think a team like UNB, though, is going into this one with a huge chip on their shoulder from last year, losing to their conference rivals, and then...
I think they have something... Yeah. I think they have, to some degree, a bitter taste in their mouth. I don't think... Nobody wants to lose at home.
Yeah.
They made some redemption the next day, but it's not the game they wanted to play.
But do they have something to prove, though?
Absolutely. I think that they never had a chance to prove who they were because they never played Alberta. They weren't in the finals. They beat Saskatchewan, and that's great. But I think all of these teams have something to prove. Saskatchewan, I mean, there's a team that hasn't won a title since their coach was a player. I mean, right? So
I forgot about that.
So that's a team that I think if anyone has anything to prove in any of these tournaments going, last year, this year, next year, the 2 years past, it's always Saskatchewan has the most to prove. They're constantly at the top. They're constantly in the top 4 in ranking, but they have not won a national title. They've got there once. UNB took it away from them. And they haven't been to the final. The last time they were in the title, they had to play Alberta in Alberta, and they lost. And they had to play Alberta at home, and they lost.
So Alberta is effectively Saskatchewan's demons.
Yes.
That they just can't seem to ever exercise.
And when they get past them or they're not in the way, then they hit UNB.
Yeah.
It's terribly hard to try and predict a tournament in which you're going to go through and you're not going to meet one of them.
Yeah.
Right? You can, and if you're going to meet one of them, because if you're not meeting them in the first or second round, they're on the other side of the bracket, and one of them is going to come forward and meet you in the finals. So
Saskatchewan had a chance at a blissful UNB and Alberta-less final if they could have just beaten the Bears in the semis this year. They wouldn't have met UNB.
Right. Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it.
Just always at the table, but they never get past the butter.
Yeah. It's kind of like being the middle brother, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The big brother always beats you up, and the little brother ended up kind of being as big as the big brother, and now you're stuck in the middle of 2 guys beating you up, and you just never get past them.
So is there? I wanted to do kind of a deep dive because I know we've mentioned OUA being the weaker conference. We know Ottawa's out, Ryerson's out, Brock's out, and those are sort of the big names. We know it's either going to be Western or Guelph coming from the West, and those 2 teams are not very good. Does Carleton have a chance at all?
I think Carleton has a chance. I'd like to see Carleton and Queens. Queens only because they have players that were there 2 years ago. They got stuck in the weather. They showed up on the day they had to play. Not the greatest situation to be in, and really they did as best as you could consider. Think playing against, like, for me, the best team we've ever had with Maillet and Murray and all of that. I think I'd like to see them. I think
easy way to get pounded into the dirt, right?
Well, I mean, you're showing you got bus legs. You've only been off the bus for 2 hours. Just had something to eat. Putting your gear on to go play the national.
The best team in the country.
The best team, number one seed in the country, with all these great guys who won Defenseman of the Year, who won Offensive MVP of the Year. And scores 5 goals at home. Hey, guess what? We're playing in their home rink, and doesn't give up more than 2 goals in their home rink, which is where we're playing. So yeah, everything was stacked against them. So it was tough. I think if they can get there, they could build on that. Carleton's a bit. Yeah, they did something they've never done before. Now it's a matter of whether they will see beyond that, which is beating you. They beat UQTR, right? And they hadn't done that before, right? So and then they beat McGill. So now that they've gotten through that, now is a matter of have they set their goals far enough to kind of keep going, or have they kind of used it all up? Mm-hmm. But looking at the tournament, I think it's going to be a great tournament in Lethbridge. The time zones will be interesting. Going west versus east, that's always a challenge for the east teams to get out there, and the 2 or 3 hour differences. Just traveling and flying into Lethbridge is like flying into UNB, Fredericton. I checked. Air Canada flies a little Beechcraft. That's the little thing that flies to Halifax. 9 seats, right? So you're not going to be flying that. And WestJet flies a Dash 8 Q400. With 60, 70 people, and luggage can get lost, and they don't like weather. Or do you fly into Calgary and take the bus, which is I think it was about an hour and a half or something like that.
Either way, you want to get there a few days before.
Oh yeah, no, that was that we learned that one that year. The coach from McGill, Kelly Nobes, he said in the interview, some of it was kind of being a little critical of Queens. He said, I think the quote was, we all know if you play on Thursday, you travel on Monday. If you play on Friday, you travel on Tuesday, just to give yourself the extra day, which Queens hadn't done. They tried to travel on Tuesday for Thursday. Yeah. But, yeah, they take the whole week off, so you may as well leave on Sunday and just get there and acclimatize. And I think, and then looking forward is now, I mean, I know we haven't even done this tournament, but next year we're at Halifax. And I think that's a big motivator for this team as well.
So St. Mary's is the host next year?
Acadia is the host.
But they're doing it in Halifax.
At the Metro Center. And so I think this team is
Tickets.
I think exactly. This team is really thinking, and Gardner's that kind of seed planter is don't just look to win 1, win 2, win 3, win 4, that 2017.
Be a dynasty.
Win as many as you can.
Win as many as you can, because you don't know how many chances you're going to get again. And UNB had, one of the things that UNB had never done until 2017 was defend. Right? All the best teams, Toronto in all their big years, they had defended multi-years in a row. And Alberta defended many times in a row. But no one had, and Alberta had defended even in 2014 and 15, 2013 and 14. They had 14, 15, they defended.
So UNB's like a relatively new power to it.
Well, I mean,
to being dynasty.
To be a dynasty, they're the current dynasty, not a long-term dynasty, right?
Yeah.
But the hockey's changed. I mean, Toronto played in a different era in the 70s and the 80s, where you could have 32-year-olds playing on your team. Can't do that anymore. So it kind of different. And also, you only had to win 2 games. You played you played a final, all done. Thanks for coming to Toronto, and have a good trip home. All done. Now it's 8 teams, 3 games,
Single limb, anything could go wrong.
Anything go wrong, anything go right. Before it was 2 games, so all you had to be is hot.
Well, you mentioned Miracle Moncton.
So Miracle Moncton. So looking statistically back at nationals, we haven't had a Cinderella since '94, and I define a Cinderella as a team that really had not been ranked all year, was definitely outside the top 10, and then just poured it on, just found the mojo and the lightning in the bottle, and went through 3 weekends and won the semis, won the finals, went to Toronto, won 2 games in a row, and we're title. And no one ever predicted it, and they just came out of nowhere. Since then, the winner has always been a team ranked in the top 4.
Yep.
That makes sense.
In October.
Yeah, that's true. You were saying, wasn't it that if you're not ranked like in like the 1 or 2 seed or something like that, like it goes down?
The 1 and 2 seed have a 50% chance of winning the national title if they're ranked 1 or 2 in October.
Yeah.
That's how crazy that is. That's how lopsided this league is. If you are not ranked 1 or 2, you're really on the outside looking in. If you're not even in the top 10, you're not even in the finals, right? We haven't even had a Cinderella be a runner-up.
Yeah, that's
right.
Fair.
Really, that's come out of nowhere and get to the finals, which is why it's always tough for OUA teams. Also, if you don't win 20 games, it's hard to get into the finals because you just don't have enough winning pedigree to get there. You haven't won enough, and you're just not competitive enough if you haven't won 20 games.
So, if we're saying anyone outside of the top 4 in the national rankings is done, that means that we have Alberta, UNB, and Saskatchewan. Ottawa's already out. And that was your top 4 up to now. Carleton will probably be ranked 4 going into the tournament. Probably.
Oh, well, I mean...
Because, I mean, they're passing Calgary, who's out, right?
Right, and that's the strange thing. Last week, this current past Tuesday, there were still some holdovers. I think Western or someone on the OUA wasn't even in the top 10. And two teams that were in the top 10 can't go anywhere, Calgary being one. I think Ottawa was the other. They got some extra bonus votes. And also because this year's rankings are the first time that we're incorporating media vote with the ELO. Some teams have such a strong ELO, they get in, right? I think one of the Ontario teams had 2 voter votes, but had an ELO of 58, which got them to 60, and that got them into the 10th spot, right? So almost the ELO should be removed at this point, and just leave you with the teams that can go anywhere.
For instance, St. Mary's right now has received 74 media votes and 15 ELO points for 89. They're currently ranked 8th. McGill was ranked 9th with 14 media votes and 75 ELO points is who you're talking about.
And they're not even in the playoffs, right? They've been eliminated.
Yeah, that's sort of the weird one with Ottawa. Ottawa's had 93 votes and 105 for their ELO. Carleton's at 42 votes and 90. So I imagine Carleton will take that spot, but...
Yeah, and now it's or whether St. Mary's gets extra points. But the hard part with St. Mary's is the next vote will be next Tuesday. It takes into consideration the weekend. The AUS finals on Monday won't be incorporated into that ranking.
UPEI was receiving votes last week?
Yeah. There's always a chance. When you hold a good team to a low score, they think, well, that's a good team, right?
Fair enough.
So overall, I think the season was... maybe not the most competitive season overall that we've ever had, but I think we saw a lot of good things this year. I mean, in St. Mary, we had a lot of good races. We had a lot of good drama outside of the fight, which was very dramatic. Especially, I have to say, from a personal view, the video from the gentleman behind the bench was the coolest ever. That was the coolest ever.
God, that video is so obnoxious.
Yes, it is.
It took every ounce of my being not to send that to every person I know who goes to Acadia that would do something exactly like that.
Is this you?
Is this maybe?
But the hard part,
how should I know?
The hard part for UNB now is you look at this team and you look at the great offense and the great defense and the great coaching and the great staff and everything they do. But is this team really going to be? Is this team a championship beat UNB Saskatchewan team? That's what's going to make this tournament really interesting. Which is why I really hope we have cross. I don't. Nothing against.
You don't want a Canada West semi.
I don't want a Canada West semi and an AUS semi because I don't want to lose that game like happened last year. You don't want the other team to get lightning in the bottle and you don't get your chance at the shot. And I'm not.
I mean, to be fair, X was deserving last year.
Yes, and everyone says that, right? You just want your shot, and they took it away from us, right? But if that had been a Saskatchewan semi to an Alberta final, that would have been amazing, right? If you have both AU cross-conference semis and then another
UNB and X maybe meeting in the finals. That would have been wild.
Or UNB X final or UNB Alberta final or, X got what they wanted. They got an X Alberta final and they got to find out how hard that is. I was impressed with Alberta, and Alberta's always...
X should have won that final.
They took the foot off the gas.
They took the foot off the gas and they I think the challenge now is Alberta had just as successful a season as they had last year. I mean, they're UNB in mirror image. The only thing was they had a slow start and Saskatchewan didn't, and Saskatchewan finished first. Don't see it in the rankings. Saskatchewan gets home ice. We'll see how they do. But
I mean, the higher seeds probably to the Huskies' benefit if they can hold it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing now. I mean, Alberta can't be better than 5 if Saskatchewan wins that tournament, wins their conference, right? Because they would the best loser is 5th.
And that gives you UNB and Alberta in the second round instead.
Right. Because UNB would move to first.
Let's go Bears.
Now a neat stupid fact, UNB has played Alberta 9 times at the Nationals. They've beaten them 4 times. Every time they beat them was in the semis. They've never beaten them in the finals. So if you're
Never mind. Let's go Huskies.
If you're a UNB history guy, you want to meet Alberta in the semis.
Yeah.
You don't want to meet them in the finals. If you're coaching staff, they say, "Yeah, I want to meet them in the finals. I want to beat them and I want to show them." But it goes both ways.
How far up in the filing cabinet of Gardiner MacDougall's brain is that factoid? I wonder if he knows that. just being how superstitious he is and everything like that.
He would say it's a joy to be there, and you live. And
That's fair.
He's going to give you.
I mean, Gardner's going to give you nothing.
He's not going to give you anything personal. He's going to say.
I'm not saying what he would tell me. I'm just saying
I think
you got to guess.
I think he would say he would enjoy the opportunity to try and win that game.
Yeah.
Because it was 2015 they lost, 2008 they lost to Alberta. Those were chances where they had to do back-to-backs. Certainly in 2008 was the back-to-back chance. They won in 7, they won in 9. If they'd won that one, that would have been 3 in a row. Right. So that's just that little. But he wasn't here in 2000. That was Tom Coolin.
Yeah.
Right.
So one thing you did mention off the air after we were done was that's the fact that Gardner's contract is up after the end of this year.
His contract, I believe, ends in June.
Yeah. He stays, right? Or does he go?
That is a very interesting question.
If he goes, it's going to be on his own accord. It's going to be on his own accord, right?
It'll be his own accord. It's lots of different things.
I can't imagine he's leaving for another college, though.
No, I don't see him. If he was to move, I think. If I'm speaking from my own perspective. If I was a coach at UNB, I'd only be wanting to moving up, not sideways.
Yeah.
I've already done everything I can do in U Sports. Why do I want to go do it at another U Sports college? And it took him 12 years or
where's
8 years.
Gardner from?
He's from PEI and he graduated from X. So he's an island man.
Okay, so he wouldn't go to X. I mean, I could see the whole hometown argument if you were going to try to side go, but I don't think
you
that's
wouldn't want to go
realistic.
to another U Sports team when you have a perfectly good one in UNB that's still capable.
Maybe the Charlottetown Islanders.
John Tavares.
Yeah.
No. The Charlottetown Islanders.
So if you want to set youth sports records, you may as well stay at the program that you're at, who's winning 20 games a year plus. Why would you want to go to Regina or Saskatchewan, Regina or UPEI, and start off with 10 or 12 or 15 and then kind of start all over again? Certainly you could prove you did it again, and everyone would say you're a great coach at the university level, but I think the challenge for him is whether he gets an offer to a major junior, OHL, or AHL, or Europe. I mean, I could see him going over and coaching in Europe. But he's a development, university coaching is a lot different at those levels. This is now not 30 games a year. It's like 80, 60, 80 games a year. It's less developmental. It's more X's and O's. It's more strategy, lots of pacing. And he's a general manager and coach at UNB. He would not likely be the general manager at an OHL or a CHL team. Yeah. Certainly not at an AHL team. So now if he was to stay, the interesting opportunity now is you could now set the all-time winning record if he was to stay for like another 5-6 years. I mean, there's another 120 wins, well into the 500s, almost 600 wins. Probably you could say 2 or 3 national titles. He'd have more national titles than almost than anyone. I mean, Claire Drake probably I believe has the most. I don't know what the number is. It's around the 9-10 range. So at that point, you're looking at Hockey Hall of Fame stuff. Now, Claire Drake had a lot of other things going for him, which is why he got into there. He was a great coach, and he was a mentor to many other coaches. There's nobody who doesn't know him. So I think it's anything can happen.
Does Gardner have any prominent names on his coaching tree? Anyone that's been his assistant or worked with him?
No, because his assistants have all stayed.
Yeah,
I was just wondering.
Well, I guess the prominence would be is Andrew Brewer, who's the associate coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs, was the video coach for UNB. And then he was the video coach for UNB.
That's a pretty impressive notch in the coaching tree.
He encouraged Andrew to be the video coach for Team Canada. And that's how he was for Hockey Canada, which then had him be the video coach for Team Canada, where he met Babcock, and then Babcock invited him to Detroit, and then on to Toronto.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for this men's hockey. I don't want to say postseason because it's technically not quite postseason. So maybe Eric will get another email from us in a couple of weeks. Yeah. But
happy to go through the whole rundown of the tournament. Yeah.
But thanks for coming on, Eric. Where can people find you?
VRedsHockey.com.
So Eric's website is vredshockey.com. This has been Overtime Radio on CHSR 97.9 FM. Thank you guys for tuning in. This Friday will be our Canada Games special. We've already got a couple things set up. You heard me kind of mention in passing the interview with Cameron McMaster. He will be on the show as well. Assuming everything lines up, we should also have interviews with gold medal boxer Isaiah Haya and the bronze medal New Brunswick short track speed skating team for Friday. So thank you guys for listening in, and we will see you then.